Blitz didn't move. While every other dog on the range was locked into formation, ears perked, eyes alert, bodies tense with trained anticipation, Blitz stood like stone, facing the far edge of the training yard. Not a growl. Not a blink. His gaze fixed on the empty concrete wall like he was watching something only he could see. Officer Matt Carver noticed it instantly. He had only been on the job 2 weeks at the Federal K-9 training center outside Reno, Nevada, and already they'd handed him the problem dog. Blitz, a 4-year-old Belgian Malinois with a pedigree that screamed elite. But the file stamped on his crate told a different story. Failed obedience, failed scent detection, failed compatibility, recommended for discharge. This morning was his 3rd drill. The others were running formation commands: heel, pivot, stop, return. Blitz was supposed to be learning the same, but instead of responding to Matt's calm voice, he had turned away from the line and locked eyes with the far wall. "He's broken," someone muttered behind Matt. Probably Diaz, one of the older handlers who treated the training yard like his kingdom. "I've seen lawn ornaments with more drive." Matt ignored the comment. His focus stayed on Blitz. The dog's posture wasn't lazy. It wasn't distracted. It was something else. Legs squared, neck tense, ears slightly back. Not out of fear, but restraint. Like he was waiting for a signal only he would recognize. Matt walked up slowly, stopping a few feet away. "Blitz," he said gently, keeping his tone low and steady. "What are you seeing?" The dog didn't look at him. "He doesn't respond to his own name." Sergeant Holloway barked from the sidelines. "I told you, Carver, that one's a dead file." Matt reached for the leash anyway. Blitz allowed it. No aggression, no resistance. But no enthusiasm either. It felt like clipping into a tether with a ghost on the other end. They walked back toward the cone-marked lanes. Other dogs were breezing through the drills, their handlers offering praise and treats. Blitz kept his distance from them all, eyes constantly scanning the environment. He stopped at corners, checked door frames, positioned himself instinctively between mat and open space. None of it was part of the drill. It was something else. Muscle memory, maybe. But from where? Back at the starting point, Matt knelt beside him. "You're not disobedient," he whispered. "You're just not playing the same game." Blitz's ears twitched slightly at that. Nothing more. But Matt noticed. The second half of the morning was scent work, introductory level. 5 boxes, one with a trace of cocaine scent. Each dog got 2 passes. Most nailed it on the first run. Blitz approached the boxes without hesitation, sniffed each once, then sat down and stared at Matt. Not at the box, not the scent. At him. It wasn't a question of what's next. It was a question of why. Matt exhaled slowly. He could feel the stares from the other handlers boring into his back. Could almost hear the judgment forming. Rookie got stuck with a dud. "Don't take it personally," said Holloway, striding over with his clipboard. "That dog failed out of Quantico, and they're the gold standard. Hell, I heard he bit a trainer once during recall." "That true?" Matt asked, not looking away from Blitz. Holloway snorted. "Paperwork was redacted. All I know is he's your headache now." Matt nodded, still watching the Malinois. That afternoon, the sky over Reno boiled with desert heat. The concrete yard shimmered with mirage-like waves. Matt walked Blitz to the shade behind the storage trailers, away from the noise. The dog laid down, facing the chain-link fence. Still alert, always watching. Matt sat on an overturned plastic crate, wiped sweat from his neck, and said quietly, "You ever hear of a dog named Ember?" Blitz didn't move. "Mine," Matt continued. "Back in my firehouse days, trained search and rescue, could find survivors under collapsed ceilings, buried gas leaks, all of it." The memory twisted something deep in his gut. She died in a warehouse collapse, wouldn't leave until the last kid was out, saved 3, never made it out herself. Blitz shifted slightly, not toward him, just listening. I thought I'd never work with another dog again. Matt admitted, but then I saw your file. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was dense, full of things unsaid. Matt looked at him. I don't think you're broken, Blitz. I think you're waiting. At that exact moment, behind them on the other side of the fence, a truck backfired. The sound cracked through the yard like a shot. Blitz didn't startle. He spun. Not out of fear, but reaction. Low stance, eyes sharp. He darted 10 feet across the dirt, circled a wooden crate, then froze, angled toward an imaginary threat. No barking, no flinch, just readiness. Matt didn't move. Blitz's eyes scanned like he was clearing sectors, and then, just as suddenly, he returned to Matt's side. Saturday tail still, posture upright. What the hell was that? Came a voice. One of the instructors had seen it from a distance. That wasn't standard reaction. Matt didn't respond. He was too busy trying to catch his breath, because in that moment he had seen it, clear as day. Blitz hadn't failed the drill. The drill had failed him. That night, Matt returned to his apartment and pulled up the facility's internal network. He dug into Blitz's file. Most of it was routine, transfer forms, redacted notes, failed assessments, but buried in the metadata of a PDF, he found a stray line of text. Previous assignment, DoD Tier 1 K9 program. Status, Handler KIA. The room went still. KIA killed in action. Blitz hadn't just lost training. He'd lost his partner, his world, his language. Matt leaned back in his chair, heart hammering. Suddenly, everything made sense. And in that quiet, undeniable clarity, a storm began to build. Because if Blitz wasn't just a broken dog, then who the hell had trained him to be a ghost? Matt showed up an hour early the next morning, before the sun crested the ridge and turned the yard into a skillet. The quiet was thick enough to feel. No whistles, no shouting, no snapping of leads. Just the sound of wind pushing dust across the concrete. Blitz was already awake when Matt approached his kennel. Not pacing, not barking. Just sitting, eyes trained on the far end of the compound like he'd been keeping watch all night. You sleep at all? Matt asked. The dog didn't move, didn't blink. Matt clipped the lead on gently and opened the gate. Blitz walked out with measured steps, neither rushing nor resisting, like he was agreeing to a temporary truce. The others trickled in as the sun rose. Voices grew louder, boots heavier, radios started squawking in clipped static. Matt led Blitz to a quiet corner of the yard and waited for the drills to start. Today was tracking. A baseline course with a simple human scent laid across 50 yards of dirt and gravel. The kind of exercise most of the other dogs could do half asleep. Let's see if your ghost dog can follow a sandwich. One of the handlers snickered. Reeves, of course. Young, sharp-tongued, and loud in the way people are when they're trying to sound like they know more than they do. Matt ignored him. The drill started. One by one, dogs were released down the course, noses low, tails high, moving with the energy of dogs who knew they were doing well. Then it was Blitz's turn. Matt unclipped the lead and gave the soft command. Track. Blitz took 3 steps, stopped, sniffed once, and sat down. Reeves burst out laughing. That dog couldn't even track a cheeseburger. Even Holloway, who normally kept a soldier's discipline, let out a short breath that sounded like disappointment. Matt didn't react. He walked up slowly, clipped the lead back on, and whispered, Let's just walk it. They moved together down the course, not performing, not proving, just existing. Blitz didn't lower his nose. He wasn't interested in the scent. But Matt noticed something else. Every 20 feet or so, Blitz would pause. Scan. His body would stiffen just slightly, head turning in sharp angles. He wasn't looking for a human, he was clearing sectors. A wave of cold ran through Matt's spine. He recognized that movement, had seen it once before, in the ruins of a warehouse 5 years ago, back when he was still on Squad 17. Right after the 3rd floor collapsed. Right after they'd lost Tommy. There'd been this dog, part of the 2nd response team, a black German shepherd named Ember. She moved through rubble like she'd built the place herself, eyes darting, back hunched low, clearing corridors that no longer had walls. She didn't bark, didn't wait for commands. She acted, like she had ghosts to protect. Blitz was moving the same way. After the drill, while other handlers tossed balls or gave praise, Matt took Blitz behind the equipment shed. A quiet spot, just enough shade to cool off. Blitz sat without being told. Matt sat down beside him on the dusty curb and pulled a thermos from his bag. Coffee was lukewarm, but it did the job. "You know," Matt said after a few minutes, "the night the roof fell in, Tommy and I had just finished pulling a kid out from under a stairwell. Thought we were in the clear, but something shifted. I don't remember the noise, just the weight, like the air dropped 100 pounds. Blitz didn't move, but Matt felt the dog listening. I couldn't reach him. All I saw was his helmet, crushed under the beam, and the damn dust in the air. It felt like drowning." He paused, the words heavier now. "They told me to evacuate, but I couldn't leave him like that. Ember was the only one who stayed. She curled up next to his body like she was guarding a tomb." Matt exhaled slowly, stared out across the yard. "Some things get stuck in you. The things you don't finish. The people you couldn't save." Blitz shifted then. A small motion. He laid his chin on his front paws. Not casual. Not relaxed. Grounded. It was something. That afternoon, another round of scent drills. Matt knew Blitz wouldn't follow the box exercises, so instead, he tried something different. He walked him around the perimeter of the facility, letting the dog set the pace. No commands, no expectations. At the far end of the yard, near the old shipping containers no one used anymore, Blitz suddenly froze. Not the skittish freeze of an anxious dog. Number this was precise, intentional. Matt stopped walking. Blitz was staring at a rusted container, completely still, not a twitch in his tail. "What do you see?" Blitz didn't respond, but he didn't move either. Matt followed the gaze and noticed a faint draft, just enough for a small sound to carry. A tapping, metal on metal. They approached carefully. Matt pulled the latch and opened the door. Inside was nothing but storage clutter. Old cones, retired bite sleeves, a damaged speaker. But Blitz stepped inside, turned left, and sat beside a corner with cracked floor tiles, like he'd found something important. Matt knelt beside him. "You've done this before," he whispered. Blitz looked up at him, and for the first time since they'd met, Matt saw something flicker behind those dark eyes. Recognition. He wasn't just waiting. He was remembering. Matt leaned in, voice low and steady. "You were trained for something else, weren't you? Somewhere the rules were different." Blitz blinked once. Slow. Focused. Matt stood, closed the container, and walked Blitz back to his kennel. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat on his couch, laptop open, staring again at the dog's file. DoD transfer. No civilian training history, no clear trauma records. Just that one line, handler KIA. Matt had seen men fall apart when they lost their partners, but he'd never thought about what happened when the one left behind wasn't a man. He looked across the room, where Blitz was curled up on an old dog bed he'd never touched before tonight. Sleeping. Peacefully. For now. Matt took a deep breath and made a decision. He didn't know what Blitz had seen, or what he'd been made to do, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't giving up on a partner who still showed up, even if the world called him a ghost. Blitz didn't track the tennis ball like he was supposed to. Matt tossed it underhand, watched it bounce once, then settle 10 feet away in the dry Nevada dirt. Blitz didn't budge. His ears twitched toward the sound. His eyes followed it. But he didn't chase. He didn't care. Matt exhaled, crouched next to him, and picked the ball up again. "You know," he said softly, "this is supposed to be the easiest part." Blitz shifted slightly, eyes fixed on the perimeter. There were 2 open gates at the far end of the yard. The others were shut. He wasn't watching the ball. He was watching the exits. Matt stood, brushing dust off his knees. "Okay then, let's do it your way." For the rest of the morning, Matt abandoned the drills. No clickers, no leash pressure, no treats, just space. He walked Blitz across the yard without saying a word. They passed between the kennels and obstacle courses, the scent lines and chew posts. Blitz kept pace, loose and fluid, but every time they neared a new section of the yard, his posture changed. He would slow at corners, lean his head just enough to sweep the angle without giving himself away. His nose wasn't down like a dog following scent. It was lifted, reading wind, listening. He would stop before thresholds, check both sides before entering. Not out of fear, out of training. It wasn't that Blitz didn't follow the protocol, it was that he followed a different one. A deeper one. Matt began to test it. He led Blitz toward the equipment sheds, the old shipping containers, the ones no one used anymore except for surplus training gear. Blitz moved ahead by a few paces, silent and coiled like wire. At the container's entrance, Blitz stopped. Then, without prompting, he pivoted and sat, back to the door, eyes scanning the open yard. Not guarding, not alerting, covering. Matt felt a chill he couldn't explain. He reached for the latch and pulled open the container. Inside was the same mess as yesterday. Cones, bite sleeves, old scent boxes. But that wasn't the point. Blitz didn't even look. He wasn't interested in what was inside. He was watching Matt's flank. "Where did you learn that?" Matt whispered. No response. Just a stillness so perfect it felt intentional. Back at the training yard, the others were finishing drills. Diaz's bloodhound was dragging him through the obstacle run like a freight train. Reeves was showing off again, walking his shepherd through an off-leash heel with tight, flashy turns. Matt didn't even bother stepping back in line. He was learning more with Blitz outside the script than he ever could on paper. Later that afternoon, he spoke with Sarah Tarn, one of the few handlers on base who kept her head down and did the work without posturing. "Mind if I ask you something?" he said, approaching her while she coiled a lead on the fence. "Shoot. Have you ever seen a dog run room clears? I mean, properly? Sweep, pivot, check for threats?" Sarah frowned. "You mean like a mock room? On command?" "No," Matt said. "Not on command, just doing it." She narrowed her eyes. "Only once. It was a demo by a special ops unit years ago. Black site training dogs. They didn't wear patches." Matt nodded slowly. "What kind of dog?" "Malinois, like yours. Why?" He hesitated, then said, "Blitz runs clears when he thinks no one's watching." She blinked. "Seriously. He checks corners. He covers exits. He even sweeps doorways. No hesitation. No confusion." Sarah stared at him. "You sure he's not trained military? File says civilian washout. Maybe the file's lying." That night, Matt couldn't shake it. He ran through the drills in his head, but nothing matched Blitz's behavior. The dog wasn't operating on instinct. He was following patterns, deliberate, practiced, tactical patterns. And every one of them pointed to a background far beyond a basic K-9 unit. At 2 a.m., he found himself back at the facility. The night watchman, Carl, nodded from the booth, too tired to ask questions. Matt walked to Blitz's kennel. The dog was awake. Of course he was. Matt sat down cross-legged outside the gate. Blitz came closer, but didn't press to the bars. He just sat, like he'd been waiting. Matt rested his arms on his knees. "All right, partner. I don't know where you came from, but I'm starting to think you were never meant to be here. Not in this yard. Not with this program." Blitz didn't move. His eyes held steady, dark and silent. Matt leaned forward, voice low. "I think you're waiting for something, or someone." He paused. "I also think maybe you don't need to wait anymore." That morning, Matt broke protocol. During drills, instead of walking Blitz through the routine, he let him lead. No leash, no commands, just movement. Blitz charted a path through the course that made no sense to anyone else, skipped obstacles, ignored decoy distractions, paused in odd spots, but Matt followed without interference. At the end of the run, Blitz stopped at the far edge of the facility, near the old communications shack, a building scheduled for demolition. He sat down, facing the east gate, and waited. "What are you doing?" Matt murmured. Then he heard it. Far in the distance, a faint sound. Tires on gravel. Too far for most to notice. But Blitz had already picked it up. Matt stood behind him, chilled by the realization that he no longer believed this was just a dog with trauma. This was someone trained to read the world differently. And soon someone else would step into that world and recognize him for what he truly was. Not a reject, not a failure, a ghost still waiting for his signal. The morning air was sharp, dry, and already burning by 8 a.m., the kind of Nevada heat that clung to your skin and made metal fences hiss when you brushed against them. Drill day, environmental exposure sequence. On the board, horn tests, sirens, crowd noise, gunfire simulation. The staff moved like clockwork, clipboards, walkie-talkies, water bottles half melted in their holders. Handlers led their dogs through the yard one by one. Most of them barely flinched at the sounds. A few startled, a few barked. Blitz was steady, at least at first. Matt stood with him off to the side, watching the others go through the simulation. He'd kept Blitz out of the first few rounds, not out of fear, but instinct. Blitz hadn't reacted to any of the preliminary drills, not even when a car backfired last week. But this was different. The sound crew adjusted their settings. The next sequence was set to mimic controlled gunfire, short bursts starting at 85 decibels and rising gradually. "Ready?" called out the lead instructor. Matt nodded once. The speaker popped to life with a sharp crack, a burst of static, then 3 short shots, just recordings, rattled the air, and Blitz shattered. It didn't look like panic. It looked like a trigger had been pulled. One moment he was standing still, eyes forward, tail calm. The next, he exploded into motion, bolting left, cutting past cones, ripping through the agility lanes like he was chasing something only he could see. "Blitz!" Matt called, voice tight. The dog didn't hear him, didn't even hesitate. He was gone. Straight across the yard, under the security arm, through the service corridor, a blur of tan and muscle. "Carver?" someone yelled. "Control your dog." Matt didn't answer. He was already running. Blitz veered behind the water tower, took a sharp left, and disappeared behind the storage depot. Matt followed the trail, heart pounding, bootsteps dull against packed dirt. And then he saw it. Blitz was wedged underneath a parked utility truck, tucked between the rear axle and the tire well, chest heaving, eyes wide and blank. Not wild. Blank, like someone had switched off the lights inside. Matt dropped to his knees. Hey, buddy," he whispered, crouching low to the gravel, voice soft and even. "It's all right, I'm here." No response. Blitz didn't look at him, didn't blink. His breathing was shallow and measured, not like a dog in panic, but like a soldier keeping quiet while waiting out incoming fire. Matt didn't reach for the leash. Didn't touch him. He just lay down next to him, flat on the gravel, cheek pressed against the dirt, heart thudding against the stillness. Minutes passed. 10, then 15. Neither of them moved. No one else came. Blitz's eyes slowly shifted, just a flicker, but enough to register Matt's face, a recognition, a return. His chest rose deeper, then slower. Then he blinked. Once, then again. "You're back," Matt whispered. Blitz didn't move toward him, but he didn't flinch either. The tension in his spine softened. The tip of his tail twitched. Matt exhaled, barely above a breath. "I saw what happened. I know that wasn't fear. That was memory." Blitz's ears tilted slightly. His body eased down, paws relaxed. Still alert, but no longer locked in that invisible battlefield. Matt eased up slowly, sitting cross-legged beside the truck, sweat soaking through the back of his shirt. "You've done this before, haven't you?" he asked quietly. Silence. But it wasn't empty. It was full of history, ghosts, unspoken battles. Matt finally clipped the lead gently onto Blitz's collar, not because he needed to restrain him, because he needed to bring him home. They walked back across the yard slowly, past the instructors, past the stairs, past the whispers. No one said anything, but everyone had seen it. Not a dog freaking out, a soldier breaking protocol. That night, Matt stayed late. Blitz slept at his feet in the office, curled tightly in a ball like a dog who hadn't truly rested in years. Matt opened the file again, scrolling past the useless redactions, the blank training logs, the transfer notices. He looked instead at Blitz himself, his behavior, his instinct, the way he moved without needing to be told. This wasn't learned behavior from some basic obedience course. This was forged, burned in. And it only came out when the war in his mind came back to life. Matt leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. Whatever Blitz had seen, whatever he'd lost, it wasn't just buried. It was waiting for the right voice, the right place, the right mission. And maybe, just maybe, someone willing to stay by his side when the ghosts came back. Blitz shifted in his sleep and let out a soft, almost inaudible exhale. Not fear, relief, the kind that only comes when you realize, for the first time, you're not alone anymore. The morning began like any other. Dust in the air, sun barely up, the K9 yard already echoing with voices and clipped commands. Matt stood near the southeast gate, sipping burnt coffee, watching Blitz pace the fence line with his usual quiet intensity. He was calmer today, but not relaxed. Never relaxed. Then the rumble of tires on gravel broke the routine. Not the clunky grind of a transport van or the whine of a patrol cruiser. This was deliberate, controlled. 4 black SUVs, identical, unmarked, rolled through the facility gate with precision that made the hairs on Matt's neck stand up. They didn't belong to anyone local. No logos, no sirens, no plates. The handlers stopped, mid-sentence. Even Holloway, who never shut up, went silent as the convoy pulled into the yard and parked nose to nose in a perfect line. The engines cut off one by one. The driver doors opened. 4 men stepped out. Not swaggering, not rushing, just moving like people who had nothing to prove and everything under control. Tactical civilian gear, eyes like gunmetal. Not a word between them, but the silence they carried was louder than any announcement. One of them walked ahead of the others. Broad shoulders, graying hair, faded scar across his jaw that didn't look like it came from any training accident. Matt didn't need an introduction. Neither did Blitz. The dog had frozen at the sight of him, Not out of fear, out of something deeper. Recognition. The man stopped 20 feet away, eyes scanning the yard before settling on Blitz. "I'm looking for the Malinois named Blitz," he said, voice calm but authoritative. Sergeant Holloway stepped forward. "Who are you?" "Commander Cole Nash, retired Navy SEAL." He didn't flash a badge. Didn't need to. Matt instinctively moved to stand beside Blitz, unsure why, but trusting his gut. "I'm his assigned handler." Nash gave him a once-over. "You're Carver." Matt nodded. "Good. You've done more than most." There was no small talk, no further explanation. Nash reached into his jacket and pulled out a whistle. Military issue, dull grey metal, worn at the edges. "May I?" he asked. Matt hesitated. Blitz hadn't broken eye contact with the man since he arrived. His body language had shifted, weight forward, tail neutral, eyes locked. "Go ahead," Matt said quietly. Nash raised the whistle to his lips and let out a single note. Not loud, not sharp, just one specific, calibrated tone. And Blitz changed. In a breath, he straightened into a posture Matt had never seen from him before, head high, chest lifted, ears alert, muscles tensed, not in fear, but readiness. He didn't bark. He didn't move. He waited, eyes locked on Nash. "My God," Holloway whispered from behind. "Look at him." Nash stepped forward once. Blitz didn't flinch. Another step. Still. Then Nash gave a subtle hand signal, barely a flick of 2 fingers near his thigh. Blitz sat. Precision. No hesitation. Eyes never leaving his. Matt swallowed hard. "Where did he learn that?" Someone muttered. Nash turned to face the group. "From me." A stunned silence followed. Nash walked over to Matt, extending a hand. "He's not yours by accident. You've kept him from going under." Matt shook it, still watching Blitz, who hadn't moved a muscle since the signal. "What is he?" Matt asked. Nash looked over his shoulder at the dog. "He's not a washout. He's not broken. Blitz was part of a Tier 1 Black Ops unit attached to JSOC, a program so classified most people think it was a myth. We called it Ghost Circuit." Matt barely breathed. "He wasn't trained to follow civilian protocol. He was trained to think, to act, to protect without hesitation in hostile, chaotic environments. What you're seeing right now, that's not obedience, that's mission mode." Matt looked down at Blitz. The dog's eyes flicked to him now, briefly. There was something new there. Not detachment, acknowledgement. Like Blitz was saying, "You finally saw me." Nash took a breath. He hasn't responded to anyone since Turkey, not even the hospital staff. But that whistle, that's not just a recall tone, it's a reset, something we conditioned into him for emergencies only. Matt nodded slowly. "And he didn't come to you?" Nash gave a small smile. "Number, he stayed by your side." Matt glanced back at Blitz again. The dog hadn't broken posture, but this time, when Matt stepped closer, Blitz followed him with his eyes. Not out of uncertainty, but trust. Nash watched them both for a moment, then turned back to the handlers and instructors who had gathered silently around the yard. "You thought this dog was a failure," he said, voice hardening. "He's better trained than half the people I've deployed with." Nobody answered. "You judged him by the wrong standard." Matt stood quietly beside Blitz, feeling the weight of every moment they'd shared, every misunderstanding, every stubborn silence between them. He thought of the drills, the failures, the whispers behind his back. And now, the way Blitz waited, ready, focused, steady, not broken, just finally understood. The debrief room was windowless and cold, buried behind layers of old cinder block and security doors. The kind of space built for blunt conversations and truths too heavy for open air. Matt sat at the long table, elbows resting on the worn surface, eyes locked on the man across from him. Cole Nash. Even out of uniform, the man carried presence like body armor. Quiet, squared, impossible to ignore. To his right, Sergeant Holloway leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his usual sarcasm notably absent. Across from Matt sat Captain Lane, the base commander who'd just flown in from Sacramento and hadn't said a single word since walking through the door. Blitz lay beside Matt's chair, calm and alert, gaze flicking between Nash and the doorway like he was still assessing threat levels. Nash's hands were flat on the table. "I'll make this simple," he began. "Blitz wasn't meant to end up here. What happened wasn't your fault, but it wasn't his either." Matt said nothing. Lane cleared her throat. "Let's back up. Start from the beginning." Nash gave a slow nod. He was part of a covert military working dog program codenamed Phantom Tier. The unit operated under JSOC, funded through discretionary defense lines and buried beneath layers of classification. We were tasked with surgical operations, deep extractions, asset retrieval, and site control in denied zones. Lane raised an eyebrow. "I've heard rumors. Most people thought it was a myth. Most people weren't supposed to believe it." Nash said, "That's the point." Matt leaned forward slightly. "And Blitz?" Nash glanced down at the dog. "He was our ace. Trained from 8 weeks old in a program most handlers wouldn't survive a month in. No leash, no verbal commands. Entirely gesture-based and environmental cues. Operated independently in high-risk zones." Lane asked, "How many deployments?" Nash didn't blink. 15 confirmed, 8 in active conflict zones. His last was in eastern Syria, a collapsed city district held by insurgents. We were assigned to extract a human rights official who'd gone off-grid. Everything was timed down to the second, in and out. Matt could feel something tightening in his chest. Nash's voice grew quieter. "We had bad intel. The structure was rigged with secondary charges. Half the unit was inside when it blew. I was trapped under concrete. Communications fried. Broken leg, bleeding out." He looked straight at Matt. "Blitz didn't leave me. Every command told him to evacuate, to fall back. He ignored all of them." Matt swallowed. "He held the outer perimeter for 6 hours. Nash continued. 6 hours. Multiple engagements. Took shrapnel to the side, a grazing round through the flank, and still held ground. When the recovery team found us, he was standing over my body, bleeding, barely breathing, but alert, still protecting me." Lane's face had gone pale. Holloway's jaw was clenched. Matt finally spoke. "So how the hell did he end up here, tagged as a reject?" Nash exhaled. "That's where it gets ugly." He reached into his file folder and slid a piece of paper across the table. Matt picked it up. A single line on a transfer form. Subject failed civilian transition. Recommended for reassignment. Cause, behavioral instability post-handler injury. Matt stared at it. "That's a polite way of saying they didn't know what to do with him." Nash said, "I was medically retired 2 weeks after the operation. Surgery, rehab, hearings. Blitz was sent to a military vet hospital for evaluation. I pushed to bring him home. I fought like hell." Lane raised an eyebrow. "And? They denied me." Nash said flatly. "Said he wasn't suitable for reintegration. That his trauma response made him too volatile. They redacted his service history, stripped the tier clearance from his records, and dumped him into the civilian K9 system with no handler notes." Matt looked down at Blitz. The dog met his eyes calmly, as if saying yes, all of that happened. And yes, he still remembered every second of it. "They buried him," Matt said softly. Nash nodded. "They erased him, because it was easier to call him broken than to admit the system failed." Silence filled the room. Then Lane spoke, voice tight. "Why now? Why come here? Why track him down after all this time?" because I didn't know where he was. Nash said, "Until 3 weeks ago, an old contact in the DoD flagged a request for extended evaluation on a Malinois showing uncharacteristic environmental behavior at a federal K-9 facility. I recognized the phrasing." Matt sat back. "You saw it and knew." Nash nodded. "I knew it was him. I knew you were the one handling him, and I knew, finally, he had someone who didn't give up." Matt blinked hard. Blitz shifted closer to his chair, resting his chin against Matt's boot. Lane looked between them. "And what now?" Nash's voice was steady. "I don't want him back. Not anymore. He's chosen his partner." He looked at Matt. "You." Matt cleared his throat. "He didn't run to you yesterday. Not when you gave the signal." "No." Nash agreed. "He stayed by your side. That says everything." Another silence. Then Lane sighed. "I'll do what I can. We'll update his status. Begin the process to reinstate his credentials, at least partially. He'll still be off book, but not off record." Nash nodded once. Then he looked at Matt and said something that hit harder than anything else. "He saved my life, but I think you're the one giving him his back." Blitz didn't move. He didn't have to. Everyone in that room finally understood. He wasn't a failure. He was a warrior who had simply outlived his war. And now, maybe he was finally coming home. The village looked abandoned, but it was built to feel alive. Rows of sun-bleached plywood structures sat crooked on cracked concrete. Windows shattered on purpose. Doors hung half off their hinges. Trash strewn in deliberate patterns. It was a replica of chaos, a training ground for urban warfare, tucked behind the outer edge of the federal facility, rarely used by the K-9 division. Matt had only seen it once during orientation. Most handlers never set foot here, but Cole Nash had asked for it specifically. "We called it a ghost run," he told Matt that morning, his voice low as they stood outside the perimeter. "We used it to test decision-making under pressure. Noise, distractions, decoys, one target, one goal. Find the hostage, bring them home." Matt watched Blitz sitting at his side, focused, still. No leash, no commands. He hadn't blinked since Nash started talking. "What's the point of this?" Holloway asked skeptically, standing nearby with arms crossed. Nash didn't even look at him. "To show you what this dog really is." The SEALs from the convoy flanked the outer fence, keeping their distance. Silent. Watching. No cell phones. No chatter. Just professionals waiting for something they already understood. Matt knelt beside Blitz. "You don't have to do this," he murmured. Blitz didn't move. "I mean it," Matt said. "You've already proved everything." Still nothing. But there was energy in the air now, low, electric, like Blitz was waiting for permission to return to the only world he ever understood. Nash raised a Remington 870 loaded with a single blank round. "Everyone ready?" he asked. Matt gave a nod. The shotgun blast split the morning. The sound hit like a car crash, reverberating off the walls of the ghost village and scattering birds into the sky. Blitz didn't flinch. Nash followed with one sharp whistle, and Blitz was gone. Gone, not in chaos, but in form. He moved like shadow stitched to concrete. Low to the ground, fast without being frantic. Every turn was calculated, every step placed with the precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Matt jogged to the observation platform, heart thundering. From above, he watched Blitz enter the first structure. No hesitation. A glance left, then right. Clear. He exited without breaking stride. Second building. A mannequin in tactical gear sat slumped in the corner, a decoy. Blitz glanced at it once and dismissed it instantly. He wasn't hunting shapes, he was hunting scent. Third building. At the threshold, Blitz froze. Nose high, ears pivoted, body low. He backed out, circled the structure once, then again, pausing briefly at a cracked wall where a hidden speaker played intermittent gunfire sounds. He ignored it. Then he bolted around the rear, found a broken window, and slipped inside with barely a sound. 2 beats passed, then he reappeared. Not alone. In his jaws, carefully gripped, was a rolled towel soaked in synthetic sweat pheromones, mimicking stress. The simulation target. But Blitz didn't stop. He moved to the center of the village square and dropped the towel gently behind a rusted barrel. Then he did something no one expected. He circled. Not in confusion, in control. He scanned the rooftops, angled his body toward the most likely entry point for a threat, and sat facing it, back to the barrel, guarding the hostage, motionless, complete, prepared to defend. The field went silent. Even the seals stopped moving. Matt stood with his hands at his sides, throat tight. He wasn't watching a K9 exercise. He was watching a soldier return to war. Nash stepped onto the field, walking calmly across the square until he stood beside Blitz. Huh? The dog didn't move until Nash gave a soft hand signal, index and middle finger extended, sweeping left. Blitz stood, relaxed, still alert, still ready, but no longer on mission. Matt walked toward them, his boots crunching against the gravel, breath caught somewhere in his chest. When he reached Blitz, the dog turned and chose. He walked past Nash and sat by Matt's side, not because of a command, because of trust. Nash smiled faintly, lowering his hand. That was always the final test. Matt looked down. The ghost run? No, Nash said. Who he returns to when it's over. The others trickled in slowly. Holloway first, lips parted like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Saratan stood in the back, hands in her jacket pockets, eyes wide. Captain Lane arrived last, clipboard at her side, but her gaze never left Blitz. He didn't just find the target, she said quietly. He built a perimeter, established defense. He thought like a team leader. Nash gave a quiet nod, because that's exactly what he is. Matt crouched beside Blitz, placed a hand lightly on his back. The dog leaned into it, just slightly. But enough. A new kind of silence settled over the group. Not confusion, not awe, respect. Blitz hadn't followed the rules, he'd rewritten them. Because Blitz didn't need instructions. He needed a reason, a mission, a partner. And now he had all 3. The dust was still settling in the village square, and yet no one moved. Blitz stood in the center of the mock battlefield, eyes sharp, posture steady. The synthetic hostage lay behind him, untouched now, the simulation complete. He had finished the ghost run faster, cleaner, and with more precision than any dog the facility had ever seen. But the real test hadn't ended yet. Matt stood off to one side, hands loose at his sides, pulse still pounding from what he'd just witnessed. Not just a K9 deployment, but a return. A reclaiming of something Blitz had buried so deep it took weeks of silence, a false failure, and one familiar whistle to unearth. And now came the moment that mattered most. Across the square, Commander Cole Nash stepped forward. He walked slowly, deliberately, every movement measured. Blitz tracked him with his eyes. No tension, no fear, just acknowledgement. History lived in that gaze. The man who had once fought beside him now stood 10 feet away. Cole raised his hand slightly. Not a command, an invitation. Come here, Ghost, he said gently, voice thick with memory. The entire yard held its breath. Blitz didn't move. Cole tried again, this time stepping just a bit closer. You remember me. You saved me. You stayed when every instinct told you to run. Still, Blitz didn't move. He turned his head, not toward Nash, but toward Matt. and locked eyes, no hesitation, no second thought. Then he walked, straight to Matt. No dramatics, no sprint. Just a confident, silent stride across the dirt. He reached Matt's side, sat down, and looked up at him with the calm certainty of a soldier reporting back to his commander. Not the old one. The new one. The one who never gave up on him. Matt didn't speak. He didn't have to. He dropped to one knee and rested a hand on Blitz's shoulder. The dog leaned into it, not in deference, but in something stronger. Belonging. Cole stood quietly, lips pressed tight for a moment, before he gave a single nod and smiled. "He's yours now," he said, "not because I let him go, but because he made the choice." Matt rose, still resting his hand on Blitz's back. "You trained him. You trusted him. I just listened when no one else did." "No," Cole said, stepping forward. "You did more than that. You saw him. You didn't just earn his respect. You earned his future behind them, the instructors who had doubted. Holloway, Reeves, even Lane stood in stillness. The jokes were gone. The sideways glances had faded. All that remained now was the weight of what they'd almost discarded. Matt looked down at Blitz again. The dog was watching the field, scanning it out of habit. Still on duty, still vigilant. But the edge in his posture had softened. There was trust in the way he sat. Confidence, yes, but peace, too. Cole turned toward the SUVs waiting quietly at the edge of the yard. "I'll be leaving today," he said, mostly to Matt, but loud enough for others to hear. "They asked if I wanted to stay. I told them I already got what I came for." "You sure?" Matt asked. "I came to find a ghost," Cole said, "but it turns out he's alive and well. Just needed someone new to believe in him." Matt didn't have an answer for that. As Cole walked away, Blitz didn't turn to watch him leave. He didn't need to. He had already chosen. Later, back at the main building, as the sun dipped behind the Nevada hills, Matt led Blitz down the hallway toward the updated records office. Inside, an administrator sat waiting with a folder already open. New status, reinstated. Role, demonstration and advanced tactical companion. Matt signed at the bottom. The administrator looked up. "Officially, he's yours now." Matt reached down and scratched behind Blitz's ears. The dog didn't flinch. His eyes were steady, calm. "Unofficially," Matt said. He always was. And this time, when they walked out into the evening, Blitz didn't look over his shoulder. Because some battles are over the moment you stop running and start choosing where you stand. 3 weeks after the ghost run, Blitz walked through the front gates of the Federal K-9 Training Center with a different kind of silence trailing behind him. Not the silence of doubt, the silence of respect. It started slowly. A nod from Holloway as they passed on the range. A quiet, "good work" from Captain Lane after a debrief. Even Reeves, once the loudest voice in the chorus of critics, started showing up early to watch Blitz run drills. The title on his file had changed. No longer Remedial Evaluation, Behavioral Instability. Now it read, Special Tactical Demonstration Unit, Active. Matt stood in front of the whiteboard in the main conference room, dry erase marker in hand, as he sketched out a rough framework. Behind him, Blitz lay calmly by the door, tail resting still across the floor, ears flicking occasionally at voices in the hallway. "So, you're telling me we're creating a curriculum for trauma response K-9s?" said Lane, seated at the head of the table. "Not just for the dogs?" Matt replied. "For the handlers, too. We need both sides ready." Lane looked at the list on the board. Environmental triggers, combat protocol retention, trust calibration. It was a long shot from the usual. Heel, sit, stay, script. "I have to admit," she said, "we've never built anything like this. That's why it matters." Matt answered. Blitz sat up, sensing the shift in tone. He walked across the room and sat beside Matt's leg, calm and sure. Lane glanced at him. And he's really okay with being back out there, in front of people again? He's not okay with being seen. Matt said, he's okay with being useful. Lane nodded once. There's a difference. They started small. Blitz would demonstrate advanced maneuvers for visiting departments, room clears, dynamic entry patterns, even target scent discrimination under layered audio stress. But the real value came after the drills. In the quiet between sessions, young handlers started approaching Matt. How'd you get him to do that? What do you do when he shuts down? Does he ever go back to that place? Matt never answered right away. He let Blitz take the lead. Sometimes the dog would lean in, let a rookie handler scratch behind his ears. Other times he'd simply sit, quiet and strong, and remind them that even the most shattered things can hold their shape again. Then the real questions would come. My last partner never came home. My dog stopped eating after the last op. I froze up on our last call-out, couldn't even reach for the leash. Matt listened. Blitz stayed beside him. Together they started teaching more than tactics. They taught how to stay. One afternoon, Sarah Tan approached Matt behind the admin building. Her shepherd was trailing behind, nose to the ground. They're thinking about expanding the program, she said, bringing in dogs from overseas, some of them not in great shape. Matt rubbed the back of his neck. We'll need new protocols, different baselines, maybe even separate housing. They want you and Blitz to write it. Matt glanced over his shoulder at Blitz, who was lying in the grass, head tilted toward the wind. He's not just the example, Sarah added. He's the reason. Matt felt something shift in his chest. Not pride exactly. Something quieter. He crouched next to Blitz and murmured, We've got more work to do, huh? Blitz thumped his tail once, just once, but it was enough. The old kennel where Blitz had once been, locked away with the others marked problem cases, had been repurposed. Now it bore a new sign. Recovery Unit, Partner Integration. Inside were dogs who didn't fit the mold. Some flinched at loud sounds, others refused standard commands. A few paced all night long, eyes haunted by things no trainer could see. Matt spent hours in that building now, not fixing, just showing up. Sometimes Blitz came with him. He wouldn't approach right away. He'd sit near the entrance, eyes soft, posture open, waiting. Eventually one of the dogs would wander over, curious, cautious, and Blitz would do what no handler could. He'd simply be, present, still, unthreatening. And it worked, not every time, but enough. The biggest change wasn't in Blitz, it was in the people, the way they spoke about him, the way they asked questions, the way they started looking at the dogs who weren't easy as something more than burdens. Matt could feel it spreading. A new culture, a new mission. Not about perfection, about purpose, and the ones who had survived the worst, they were the best teachers of all. Late one evening, Matt stood with Blitz at the far edge of the property, just beyond the last line of buildings. The sky was stretching orange over the mountains, and the wind was warm and steady. No leash tonight, Matt said quietly. Blitz didn't need one. They walked the perimeter in silence, just the two of them, footsteps soft on dirt, shadows long in the fading sun. Matt looked down. You were never broken. Blitz looked up, eyes steady. You were just ahead of the rest of us. Blitz didn't make a sound. He didn't have to. He was home. And finally he had a mission worthy of everything he'd carried. Not one of war, but of return, of teaching others how to walk through fire and come out the other side, still standing. The sun was low over Nevada, bleeding gold across the desert sky, and the wind had finally gone quiet. It was the kind of stillness that made you notice every sound: the rustle of dry grass, the crunch of boots on gravel, the soft breath of a dog beside you. Matt and Blitz walked without a leash. They didn't need one. They had made this walk 100 times since the day Blitz was reinstated, but tonight felt different. Not because anything had changed, but because nothing needed to. The battle was behind them. The mission had shifted. The ghosts had stopped chasing. And Blitz, silent, steady Blitz, had become more than a survivor. He had become a guide. Matt watched him move through the yard with ease. No tension in the shoulders, no sideways glances for exit points. Just calm awareness, like a sentinel who finally believed in the place he was guarding. "You hear that?" Matt asked, his voice soft. Blitz looked up. "Exactly, nothing. No barking, no shouting. Just peace." They circled the old obstacle course, the one Blitz used to ignore. Now he stopped at the tire wall, sniffed the edge, and looked to Matt for a moment, not for approval, but to share the quiet. "You taught us all something," Matt said. "Taught us that strength isn't always loud, that some heroes don't bark." Blitz tilted his head. Matt crouched, ran his hand slowly along Blitz's neck. "Some heroes just wait until someone sees them." Blitz wagged his tail. Just once. But it was enough. They finished their round as the sky melted into navy, and the floodlights blinked to life one by one across the compound. At the far gate, a young trainee was finishing a shift with a nervous German shepherd named Axel, barely a year old and still jumpy, around sudden noises. Blitz paused, glanced at the dog, then walked toward him slowly, with the kind of body language that told the pup, "I'm not here to test you, just here to show you you're not alone." Axel didn't back up this time. He stayed put. The trainee looked at Matt, eyes wide. He always runs when other dogs get near, but not him. Matt smiled. Blitz isn't like other dogs. And that was the truth, because Blitz had done more than survive. He had transformed the very system that almost discarded him. His story had become part of the curriculum. His instincts, once misunderstood, were now the cornerstone of a program designed to rescue not just the dogs, but the people who believed in them. He had gone from rejected to revered, from written off to written into history. And all it took was someone willing to stop seeing the surface and start listening to the silence. Matt looked at the handler. "You're doing fine. Just give him time. The ones who carry the most weight don't always show it." The handler nodded. Blitz walked back to Matt's side. Together, they headed toward the admin building, where a small brass plaque had just been installed outside the door. Recovery Unit Alpha, founded in honor of Blitz, K96121. Matt paused to read it, just like he did every evening. Blitz sat beside him, eyes on the horizon. Not alert, not tense, at peace. Matt leaned in and whispered, "Ready to go home?" Blitz stood, tail relaxed, gaze forward. And as they walked into the soft shadows of twilight, Matt realized something he hadn't put into words before. Blitz wasn't just the reason this place had changed, he was the reason people had, including Matt himself. And maybe, just maybe, that was the point all along. Because some partnerships aren't about commands and collars. Some are about finding your way through the dark with someone who doesn't need to speak to understand you, someone who stays. Have you ever met someone, person or dog, who carried invisible scars from service? Someone who never asked for recognition, only a chance to be seen? What's your story with a loyal companion? Tell us in the comments. You never know who needs to hear it today. If this story spoke to something deep in you, hit that like button and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Subscribe to the German Shepherd channel, where we bring you real stories of courage, loyalty, and the silent warriors who serve beside us. Because not all heroes wear badges. Some just wait for the right signal.